Okay, so we've got our coat and we know the side that we want to put this strip onto. I've redone the strip in dark. Look, it has got light blue on the back, but I'm happy with that. And I've neatened off the edges exactly the same way as I did the edges on the front here. What I'm going to do then is I'm just going to pin this in place. So I'm going to make sure the top's at the top this time, because it wasn't quite last time. And I'm just going to go over the top stitching that was on before, so it's just a slight overlap. Careful not to stab yourself. And that's now going to finish right on the end there. I just need a little tug down just to make sure that it's right at the end. Just make sure that's sitting nicely. You don't want it to be puckering up at all. Just going to make sure that on the inside there we've got about the same amount, and we have. Okay, so I'm going to use some of my pale blue thread now, and I'm going to hand stitch this into place. So if, as I said, if you're really comfortable with your machine top stitching, then you may well be able and comfortable, and the first time you do it might actually go really smoothly. So this is more like a belt and braces for anybody who either doesn't fancy doing it the way that it's said in the instructions, or has seen me struggle and decided that's not for them. So I'm just going to use a single piece of thread because I don't think we need it double, because we'll be going up and down. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to fold this edge back. I'm going to take a couple of stitches into the bottom of the felt at the bottom of the band here. Got a little ribbon there, but I'll try a little loop there, but I'll try and get rid of that. And I'm going to try and attach it. So basically I want 2 rows of stitching, one just attaching the band to the back here, so slightly on the inside. So I'm just going through, I'm not going all the way through the felt, I'm just going through part of the band and part of the actual coat itself, just first of all to get it started off attached on. So I'm just putting a stitch through almost where that top stitching is on one side, make sure it's not going around the bottom of your band, and then one just through the side with the band on only. So it's a 2-stitch process, so one through the coat on that top stitching, and then one through the back of the felt. And what this is doing is just attaching it onto that edge first, so that we've got it sort of attached there. Then I'll go down again and I'll attach just this edge here onto there. So at the moment, if you can look, I'm sort of beyond that, and that should hopefully belt and braces then make sure that that stays nicely on for us and feels nice and secure. Oops, stopping myself. Don't do too big of stitches, because the smaller the stitches the more secure it will be. But you're not going right the way through, you want those stitches to be invisible on the top, so it looks like it's the top stitching that's actually attaching the band, as it should be in the instructions. As I say, just for me it didn't quite work, and I am working with the one with the raw edges, the band with the raw edges as well. But if you can do it with the other one, then please do so, because it was intended to be with the side without the raw edges, wasn't it? Just today that's not working for me. So I'm going to go all the way up this side, just doing this kind of stitch. And that's attaching that on nice and securely, but it's invisible on this side here, and you can't really see the stitches on the other. It looks like those top stitching threads have gone all the way through. So it's a good alternative, I think. Hopefully you agree too. And sometimes on these small garments we have to resort to some hand stitching where they're very tiny, don't we? Wouldn't like to be doing this any smaller than the 10-inch size, 16-inch size. But some of you will look at it and enjoy the challenge of the miniature. I know some people do, don't they? So I've got a knot in my thread. Let's just get that out. I'm just taking a bite out of the felt for the band, and then a bite out where that top stitching is on the inside of the coat. Well, it's on the outside of the coat actually, isn't it? It's just attaching that band down. It's almost a ladder stitch I'm doing just to attach it, really. But it's working well. Right, let me just come back to you when I've got it to the top, and then we'll turn around and I'll show you how I'm going to sew it coming down the other side. Okay, so just got to the top. That's what it's looking like from the front, and that's what it's looking like on the inside. You can't really see those stitches at all. So now what I'm going to do is do a couple of stitches at the top, just anchoring down this top edge, just so that that's nicely held in place. And now I'm just going to slip stitch down the edge here, just keeping my stitches nice and small. Again, not coming all the way through to the front, so I'm not going through onto the back there, and I'm not coming through onto the front here. It's just sort of hidden in that section there. Let me just take that little tail off. Don't need that piece of thread. So I'm just going down in this centre, just in there, look. And yes, I've got a knot in my thread which just keeps catching, but felt's very forgiving with this sort of thing. So as I just tighten that up, you won't be able to see those stitches inside there at all. Just nice and hidden. And when I get down to the bottom, I'm just going to cast off my stitches and leave a long tail and just hide the end of that thread. And that should then hold that in place. Just as securely as if it was machine stitched, but we've got that better finish, in my opinion, on mine anyway, because as you could see, my stitches had gone a little bit wonky, and I didn't want wonky stitches right down the very centre front of my coat. Thank you very much. So I've found this other way of doing it, you know, and that's it. You've got to make it work for yourself, haven't you? We're putting a lot of time and effort into making these lovely, lovely clothes. So we want it to be something that we're proud of at the end. Okay, let me get down to the bottom, and then the next bit we'll be on to, I'll give this a press as well before I do anything else, because it's been quite handled quite a lot, but I'll give it a press just on that band, and then we'll be on to doing our toggles and our buttons. Okay, so I'm happy with that. Happier definitely than I was the first time I did it. It's sitting nicely now, it's been pressed. It's lovely and neat on the inside. You can't see that hand stitching on either side, so I'm comfortable that that's a good alternative solution. Right, what we're going to do now is we're going to set up, using our leather thonging, we're going to now do the buttons. So I've got these 2 centimetre toggles from Lilly Rose Dolls. They sell the haberdashery at the shows. So if you're lucky enough to see them at a show, then that's great. And we want to cut 4 lengths of thonging 15 centimetres long. So let me just get my pieces of thonging out. Well, it's a long piece of thonging here. And we need 15 centimetres. That's not long enough. Let's have a look what 15 centimetres is on our... So it's about 6 inches. So I'm just going to lay my tape measure down for me, and I can put the end on the 6-inch mark and then snip. Now once I've got one cut, I can cut. So we need 8 pieces, 4 for the toggles and 4 for the actual finishing bits. And try not to be too generous with over snipping, because you've only got a set amount of your thonging to use. And when I roughly cut it out, there wasn't a lot spare. So I'm just putting all the ends together, or you can just use one piece, and then you can then just snip it at the bottom. Then put that piece on your, one piece on your finished items, and then just keep doing them as you go through. Oh, I just want to snip. So it's leather, so it does take a little bit of a snip. Look at that, you've only got a little bit left at the end, so you've got enough, but not masses to do an extra one. And the first thing we're going to do then first is attach our leather thonging through the hole on the button, and then we're going to tie one knot to hold that in place. So just a single knot through each. It's not going to come off, so we don't have to worry. Just even up those ends. Make sure that knot is right at the end. So there's one. So I'm going to do all 4 like that. Oops. So thread it through first. Make sure you're roughly at the end, and then left over right, or right over left and under. And then tighten that up. Pull it together. And then pull your ends down together, and you want to make sure that they're about right together. I think we do end up snipping them off anyway, so you want them to be as close to being right as possible. There we go. Right, so we've got 4 toggles tied on there, that's all good. And then when we've got 4 lengths of thonging, 15 centimetres off the other side, I can trim all the toggles to approximately 3 centimetres. So let's do that. So we've got, there's our toggle. And we want the toggles to be about 3 centimetres from the knot. So that's there. Oh, doesn't want to be snipped, that one doesn't. So you do cut off quite a bit, but that's just to make it easy to work with, I think. So that's what that looks like once that's done. So I'm just holding the knot up against my seam gauge, and then I can then snip that off, even if it doesn't quite want to. And then we're going to be wrapping these around with some threads to hold them together, ready for putting onto our. Right, I need a plaster. I've just gone and cut my finger, so please be careful not to cut yours. I'll just go and get plaster. Okay, so I've got plaster now on my finger. What am I like? Right, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start and wrap some of these. We need to just tack this these toggles down to make sure that they're fine. So we've got a piece of length of thread, and I'm going to start and wrap that round to hold these 2 edges together. So I'm going over the edge, and then I'm going to use my needle just to go in between some of those threads to move down. So that should hopefully secure that round that toggle. Let's take the end of the thread off with the knot on. Don't need that anymore now. So we're going to put these onto the coat as well later on, and then I'm going to come down a little bit further towards the end, and then I'm going to wrap the thread around again a few times, and then I'm feeding the needle down between the 2 pieces of the thonging just to hold that in place. And that sort of holds it together then, so that that'll lie flat against that. I'm going to do a few more stitches just holding that in place, backwards and forwards, just to make sure that's as secure as possible. We're going to be sewing these onto the garment as well, but if we can just get this sort of all set up ready to go, then we can make sure that those are all nice and neat. Got a little loop there I'll take off, and then take off the original thread because we'll be attaching that. So I've got some wraps of thread just at the top there, and then I've got some more just down here, and then I do need to make sure that these are the same length on the end, those loose ends. So that's one done. So I'm going to go ahead and just do those same wraps around the toggles, and then I'll come back to you when I'm doing the wraps around the loops, as we see in the instructions just here. Look, this is the bit that we're doing. I'll point with my plaster finger. That we're doing these toggles here at the moment, and then we're going to go on to those loops just there. Okay, back in a minute. Just make sure that these are all the same length and they've all got the bits tied around them, they're all the same length. I've got a little thread of cotton there, let me just snip that on. Oh, we can tie these up once they're on. And then if we look at the picture, the first one is sort of like the top of the toggle is at the top of the front placket there, or cover it strip, and the bottom one is at the bottom of at the top of the pocket. So that's going to give us our approximate placement for these. So let's just pin these on in place first. I've got some thread ready to go to sew those on with. So let's get a hold of one of these. So that one there, and they extend right into the middle of the placement for that band. So that's my first one. Where's my pins gone? Hiding from me. So I'm just going to take a little bite of the felt before and a little bite of the felt after. That'll just hold that on for me to be able to stitch it. And again, just there, making sure they're straight. Okay, so that's got that one on. So I think I might stitch that one on straight away because then I can get rid of my pins. So I'm going to take a stitch probably away from the button first and leave my knot out to the side. So I'm going just through one layer of felt, not through the inside, just through one layer of felt and coming out right where those wraps were that I did before. And I'm just leaving a loose knot on the edge of my thread because we can just snip that off afterwards. Can you see that little knot's loose there? And I'm going to start and just do several stitches wrapping round in the same place as before and start to attach these toggles on. Now my coat isn't going to be played with by a child, and I don't tend to do the toggles up very often, so I may not put as many wraps around as I might do if that was not the case. I have to take that pin off now because that's attached. Oops, that stitch has gone in between the two. Just making sure that all my stitches are going around both of them, both pieces of that leather thonging. That's it. I'm still not going all the way through, look, I'm still not putting the stitches all the way through, just so that we can keep that nice and neat on the inside. When I'm happy that that's attached, I'm going to take a stitch over the thonging, but then I'm going to come up just on the other, so just on the coat side of that band there, and then I can then just make sure they're straight. I just need to lift up slightly. Just going to make sure that that then starts to go around. And I'm not covering up all the band, just in those two places. I'm just doing some wraps of these threads around that thonging, or licorice. It looks very much like a string of licorice to me. So around that licorice to hold it in place. Just make sure your stitches are nice and neat. And I'm not going to trim any off until any of the excess leather thonging off until I'm sure I've finished with what I'm sewing. So that's several stitches just there. So I'm confident that that's being held on. Oops, gone around my toggle properly. This one off, get the other one off, that's it, and then I can pull it tight. Make sure you've got no loops in your threads, and then I'm going to take a couple of stitches just to the side of the thonging, and it's just sort of to try and cast off that thread, to give it a nice little cast off. So 2 to 3 stitches just there, that's better. And then when I've got a couple of stitches in place, then I can put my needle in back underneath that thonging, and I'm going to slide through the felt till I come up to the next place. So let's get our next placement done. So if we're going to have one at the very top up here, and that goes in the middle just there, let's put a pin to hold that one in place. That one needs to be the other way around. So Come on. So that's the second one, just anchored on there. That's going to sit nicely down this front coverall placket. So then we're going to now measure these. So one's going just underneath the front yoke as well. Let's put that one on. So I'm just roughly placing them on at the moment where I think they probably will need to go, and then I can just adjust those slightly afterwards. So we're trying to get the actual toggle buttons to go in the middle of the placket going down. That last one I put on might need to go just a little bit higher. And it is just trial and error just to get these right. I think that the length is okay, so getting them the length away from the previous one and getting them to hit that placket is nice and easy. It's just getting them the distance apart from each other that's just the tricky bit. Again, trial and error until you are happy that they are in the right place. That looks about right for mine. Let's have a look and see how far apart they are, because that'll probably give you a bit of a... So there's about an inch of space between the thonging. Can you see? That's how they're looking. I'm happy with that. So with this, where we've got the needle in and it's going in between the two sections, I'm going up to the next toggle. So what I'm saying is I'm not breaking my thread in between sewing these toggles off for as long as possible, because then that means then that we've got less places for those to actually come undone. You've just got to be careful not to pull on your thread so much that you create you cinch in the coat between the toggles, because that's not a look we're going for. Oh, I'm getting all tangled up now, look. With all my buttons in place. There we go. So just take your time. Just make sure if you need to just adjust them slightly, you can do. Just pull them backwards or forwards slightly. But once you've got them actually cinched in place on that coat, then they should stay in place for you quite nicely. I'm going over about 5 or 6, well, 6 or 7 times for each one. And again, I'm not going all the way through to the inside, look. And then once I've done that many stitches, I'm just going to go across now. Dropped my pin. Just going to go across roughly in line with where the other one was, where the other set of banding is for the other one. And then I'm going to do some stitches, just holding that in place as well. You're trying to make it even all the way down the front of your coat, both where your stitches cover the banding, make sure they're straight as well. That's not the banding, the thonging, isn't it? But they do like to get caught up. But you need all 4 on so that you can actually see where you're going. You'll enjoy sewing, they said. It's easy, they said. Doesn't always feel very easy, does it? Just keep that thread over that side. Maybe that would be slightly better. So yeah, that's slightly better, isn't it? So sew those on so they're nice and tight and not going anywhere. Now I'm going to go underneath my threads between the 2 layers of felt. This one's going over too far, so let's pull it back a bit. And you're going to try and hit this one now again, where it is in line with the others. I'll take a few stitches over the top of that one. And so I'm just going to carry on just doing these, just keep travelling up in between the toggles. As you can see, I keep getting wrapped up, and I don't want to bore you with watching me have to do this. So I'm going to do that. When I get to the end, I'm just going to take this knot, you know, the knot that we left, just put some pressure on it and snip off the end of the knot. And then when you fold that down again, then the thread should go back inside for you. Any little bits of thread you've got that are hanging out, you can cut off. And once you've got them all on, then you can snip off the ends of your toggle strands to make sure they're right. And if you've got a little bit of black indelible ink, because you can see the ends of mine are a bit that leather, you can see the raw leather inside, just use some black felt tip pen or a marker pen just to mark the end of those, and that'll just cover those. Just make sure you don't get any on your coat. And you want them to all to be in line down the centre of that placket there. Okay, so let me finish off sewing these on. Won't bore you to death with doing that, and then I'll come back to you when we do the loops. Okay, so I've made one of the loops here, so you can see what that looks like. And it's done in exactly the same way as we did with the other pieces for the buttons. This time we haven't got a button on, so we're going to make a loop, so we can put the two cut edges together with your thonging. And then you want your loop to be about 1.5 centimetres from that folded edge down to the end there. So that's about there. So I pinch it with my finger and my thumb. I've then got a needle threaded with the black thread, and I'm going to just hold on to that thread underneath my fingernail just to hold it in place while we just wrap it round, probably about 10 or 15 times. And then once you've wrapped it round a few times, you can then take your needle and travel in the groove that's made by the two circular bits of thonging sort of touching each other. Give it a nice tug, and then you can do 2 or 3 stitches just through there. Just my starting thread's just in the way, and that will then hold that together for you. Oops, just until you can move down. Then I'm moving down about 1 centimetre. I'll take that starting thread off, can't I, because that's going to get in the way. So, I'm moving down about 1 centimetre. Measure it up against my other one, just so that I'm about in the right place, so about there. The thread goes down in between the two bits, then you start wrapping again. Again, another about 10 wraps. Oh, everything's getting caught up today, folks. Then we're going to take a few more stitches again through the centre of those 2 pieces of thonging just to hold that in place. So the needle's just going in between these 2 bits, just there's a little groove that you can just run your needle down and just get in between those pieces and give it a bit of a tug, and that's just holding it in place. And then that should be enough just to hold it for you till you can sew it on. Just make sure your loops are about the same size, and they are. Yep, happy with both of those. So we're going to do that to all 4 of them, and then I'll come back to you when I'm about ready to place them so that I can show you how I place them. Okay, so we've got all 4 just here. It says to trim the toggles to 3 centimetres and the loops to 4 centimetres. Let's just make sure we've got those trimmed roughly to where we want them to be, which is there. So now we can trim them all to the same length. Please make sure that you don't cut yourself like I did when I was cutting these before. The other thing that I want to do is just make sure that they do all go over that one does. Go over the toggles. Oops, that's one. We can adjust them now before they're sewn on if they didn't. 1, 2, one's number 3, yep, that's fine. So 1.5 centimetres seems to be just fine for going over them. Yeah, 4, that's fine. Right, so let's now fold over the front of our coat. Let's put it into place at the bottom edge here where it's going to be, and I've got that cover stitch, cover flap, just right on the edge there. So the 2 sides of the coat butt up underneath, and then the cover strip just goes over the top. Make sure the bottom of your coat is as right as possible and the top is as right as possible. And then when we've got our loops on, let's get one of our loops, and that's going to go so that if I lie the loop underneath the toggle, I want the first bit to go onto the So I want to be able to stitch it onto the coat, just there. That should be right for one. Let's get the other one. And so I'm putting so flattening the loop off as best as you can do, and then just pop it underneath the toggle, and then that way, although it's not over the top of the toggle, it'll tell you if it's going to lie flat or not. And then you can then just pin it into position. Carefully try not to move it, which is easier said than done. Just make sure they're all lining up still, and they are. So 2 pins. And I'm just going to sew these then on the jacket with the rest of it. And if those strips just go underneath, and just make sure they go straight across, and you should be fine then to sew those on where they hit. And that should be fine. That's 3. So we did the spacing on the actual toggles themselves, and the loops have got to match those toggles, so that should then make everything match nicely. We can even them up along the front once we've got them actually in place. So that one there is going to go just round about there. Okay, so I've got my 4 loops all on now. They look about even. And so I'm going to sew those on in exactly the same way as I did the other ones, and then they'll be ready to go on the top, and then I think we'll be done then, which will be fabulous. The other thing that I am going to do is I'm going to save some of these offcuts of thonging, and I'm going to put one or 2 of these inside my pattern packet, along with the label saying the 2 centimetre toggle, so that if ever I want to make this duffel coat again, I can take something like that along with me to the craft shop, and I can show them, and I know exactly what I'm buying then. So those bits there will go into my pattern bag with the rest of the bits, and that will then just mean that these can get thrown away. I don't normally scrap anything, but I don't know what I'd use those little bits for. And then yeah, you've got those for another day. So let me just get the rest of these toggles sewn on, and then I'll meet you back here. So I've got all 4 loops sewn on as well now, so I'm just going to tidy up these ends. So I'm just looking at where my shortest one is and where I might want things to be finished. I've got a couple here that are slightly longer, so I'm going to take those right off at the end, just there. But then I'm going to make sure that these are roughly the same, so they might have a little bit longer after the end of the stitching, but just make sure that they're all about the same length if you can do. There we go, that'll do. So, oh, black pen. Let's just put that little bit of black pen just on the end of those, so just folding the ends away from the coat so I can just colour in those ends, and just make sure you keep that out the way just so that it then doesn't mark your coat at all, because we don't want that to happen. I'm just using a Sharpie, just permanent pen, just to colour in the end of these, but you could use a felt tip if you wanted to. Just something just to take the pink away, and just to put that little bit of black on the end. Well, this has been a really, really interesting make. I hope you've enjoyed stitching along with me. I know I've made it look difficult in places possibly, but I think it's probably an intermediate sew, just because of all the top stitching, and also then just making sure that everything else is just going to go right for you and sit right. And getting the hood in is lovely. What I'm going to do is just get a character down. I've got a Harvey there that's 16 inches, that's the right size, so I'll just pop it on him so you can have a look at the duffel coat on a character and see how it looks. Here's Harvey. Let's take off his green corduroy jacket, and there's the tutorials for how to make Harvey and all of his clothes and his cap on my channel already. So if Harvey is a character that you like, I mean, just look at that hedgehog fur for his head. And if you order the pattern, then there is an option where the where the pattern comes with the fur for the head if you don't want to buy the full kit, but you can just buy the actual fur for his head. Oh, look at him. Oh, Harvey, you look adorable. So that fits nicely. I do stuff my toys well, but that fits nicely around him, and those toggles will do up. I won't do them all up for now, but it's a little tight, but he's got his waistcoat on and his trousers on, and I don't think he'd actually wear it fully done up all the time anyway, but it does fit for him, which is lovely. But then let's just hold him like that for you so you can see. So we can pop the hood down. Lovely substantial hood, fits really nicely on the back there. Here's the back, all looking all lovely. And yeah, I think he looks very smart in his new duffel coat. Let me turn the camera around and we'll have a little bit of a roundup, and then I'll be on to my next project, and I think you'll be off to make yourself a duffel coat. And then so, Harvey in all his duffel coat. So the duffel coat will fit any of the 16-inch characters from Lilly Rose Dolls. The sleeves are great. I've not had to make any adjustments to the pattern at all for that to fit him. So I've got bits of cotton all over him. The hood is lovely, nice and generous for his ears, look. That looks really nice all the way around. And those front yokes really do, front and back yokes really do add to that design, and his toggles as well just sit there really nicely. So I hope you've enjoyed stitching along with me. If you have, I'd be really grateful if you give the video a thumbs up and or leave me a comment. That really does help my channel push it out to more people. YouTube sees any interactions with my channel as being, or any of my videos as being a positive sign that it's a good video with lots of nice content. So hopefully that will then push it out to more people so we can enable more people to love Lilly Rose Dolls. My thanks go to Claire and Richard as well of Lilly Rose Dolls for gifting the pattern to me so that I could bring this to you. Excuse my plaster finger. Hopefully it'll get mended soon and I'll be able to carry on doing some more sewing. Sorry if anybody was squeamish at that point. And I just hope that that you enjoy making your duffel coat too, because it really is a fabulous project to make. So on behalf of Harvey and myself, and on behalf of Lilly Rose Dolls as well, then I just want to say, well, I'm not Lilly Rose Dolls, Claire and Richard are Lilly Rose Dolls, but I'm just doing the Sewalong videos for you. Then we want to say a really big thank you for watching today, and yeah, if you want to give become a subscriber, then please think about that. And if you click the notification bell as well, you'll be told when I upload any new videos for any more sew-alongs, and I've got lots to come. So yeah, I'll see you all soon. Happy stitching, everybody. Take care. Bye.